There comes a time in every man's life, especially after 65, when the noise dies down. The house gets quieter, the phone rings less, and somewhere between morning coffee and the evening news, a question slips in, quiet but heavy. Is this all there is now? I've been there. Many of us have. After the career ends, the children move on, and friends grow fewer, it's easy to feel like we're just passing time. But let me tell you something from the heart, something I've learned through years of elderly reflections and stories shared by wise seniors across Europe and America. Meaning doesn't retire with your job. It doesn't vanish when the grandkids stop visiting. Meaning lives inside us, and sometimes we just need to dust it off, hold it up to the light, and see it again. Today I want to share with you 4 powerful, real-life ways that older men and women have rediscovered their sense of purpose. Not through chasing something new, but by embracing what's already within. And if what you hear today speaks to something inside you, don't forget to subscribe to Elderly Reflections, where we explore senior health, motivation, and the timeless inspiration that comes from life lessons. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how comforting it is to fold laundry on a quiet afternoon? Or how brewing a pot of tea in the same old ceramic kettle you've had for decades brings a kind of peace no one talks about? Most people underestimate routine. They think routine is boring, repetitive, meaningless. But I'll tell you what I've come to understand. Routine is rhythm, and rhythm is life. After retirement, many seniors feel like the structure they once had just vanishes. No more alarm clocks, no more deadlines. At first it feels like freedom, but soon enough that lack of rhythm starts to feel like drifting. That's when loneliness creeps in. That's when questions like, what am I even doing here, begin to haunt you in the silence. Now let me tell you about Mr. Harold Thompson. Harold is 78 years old, lives alone in a small town in Oregon. His wife passed away 7 years ago. His children, busy with life in New York, call when they can, but it's not the same. For a while, Harold stopped doing much. He'd wake up whenever, eat cold cereal for lunch, watch TV, nap, repeat. And he told me then something shifted, and it was the simplest thing. One morning, Harold got up at 7 a.m. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He made eggs and toast. He shaved, he put on cologne, just like he used to when he was still working. Then he took a walk around the block. That one decision became a ritual. The next week he added in sweeping the porch every morning and writing down one thought from the day before. Within months, he had built an entire morning and evening routine. Nothing fancy, just consistency. But here's the beautiful part. Those routines gave him a sense of momentum, and that momentum made him feel alive again. Harold told me something I'll never forget. He said, "My life didn't change because I won the lottery or found new friends. It changed because I remembered how to show up for myself every single day." Now I've heard people say, but routine is just doing the same thing over and over. What's the point? The point is this. For the elderly, especially those over 65 living in the US or Europe where independence is both a blessing and a burden, routine provides certainty. When the world feels uncertain, your health, your future, even your relationships, something as small as watering the plants every day at 8 a.m. gives your life shape. It's no longer a blur, it becomes something steady. Let's talk science for a moment, because this isn't just sentimental talk. A study from the University of Exeter followed over 2,000 seniors, aged 70 and up, across the UK. The researchers found that those who had stable morning routines reported significantly higher levels of emotional stability and life satisfaction. They were less likely to report depression or anxiety. The conclusion was clear. Routines act like anchors for the aging mind. And we're not just talking about brushing your teeth. No, I'm talking about meaningful routines, things that bring your body, mind, and soul into alignment. For some, it's journaling. For others, it's feeding the birds. One woman I met in Bristol, Mrs. Annie Caldwell, 83, begins every day by reading a quote from her late husband's notebook. Just one. Then she makes herself a proper English breakfast, even though it's just her, and says, "Good morning, James," to his photo. That's her way of staying connected, of starting her day with purpose. You see, part of what's shared in this space of elderly reflections is that these small acts are not small at all. They are statements. They are quiet declarations. No, the wisdom of aging is knowing that less is more. But consistency is gold. And that's a life lesson we get to teach the younger generations, if they'll listen. So if you're sitting there today wondering how to start, how to stop feeling invisible, I'll give it to you straight. Start with one thing. Just one. Maybe it's making your bed every morning. Maybe it's lighting a candle before you sit down for dinner. Maybe it's calling your sister every Thursday at 3 p.m. Let that one thing be your anchor, then build slowly. I've spent years listening to the stories of the elderly across Europe and America. And whether it's a retired railroad worker in Michigan or a widowed artist in Paris, the message is the same. Life feels worth living again when you reclaim your rhythm. When you tell the day what it means instead of waiting for meaning to find you. And look, I know some of you listening right now might be thinking, that sounds too easy. It grows by soaking in the light every day. You are no different. Routine is not your enemy. It is the quiet friend waiting to bring you back to life. You know, for most of our lives, we're taught to chase knowledge, chase work, chase love. And then one day the chasing stops, retirement comes. The kids don't need help with their homework anymore. No one's asking for your advice at the office. And slowly, almost without warning, something slips away. Sad feeling that you're needed. But what if I told you that the world still needs you? Not in loud ways, but in the quiet, powerful way only a senior can offer. Mentorship. Now, before you shake your head and say, I'm too old for that, let me tell you something important. Mentorship is not about having all the answers. It's about sharing the questions. It's about being present. And believe me, there are people right now, young folks drowning in a noisy world, desperate for the kind of steady, lived wisdom you carry. That's what I call elderly motivation, and I've seen it change lives. Let me introduce you to someone special. Mr. Raymond Burke, 84, from a small town outside Dublin, Ireland. Raymond was a retired carpenter, built houses for 45 years. After he turned 80, he stopped going out much. His wife had passed, his hands ached from arthritis. He told his daughter no one needs an old man's stories anymore. But she pushed him. Reluctantly, Raymond agreed. He went once, then again, and soon enough every Friday morning a small group of 12-year-olds waited eagerly for Mr. Burke and his thick Irish accent. He showed them how to measure wood, how to hold a nail straight, and how to be proud of their mistakes. One boy named Liam stayed behind after class and said, Mr. Burke, you make me feel like I'm not stupid. Raymond broke down crying when he told me that. Now he says those kids saved his life. Why? Because they gave him something that every elderly person craves deep down. Not just connection, but contribution. He said, and I quote, I wasn't just living out my days anymore. I was building something again through them. You see, mentorship doesn't always happen in schools. Sometimes it's in the park talking to a young father struggling with a crying toddler. Sometimes it's in a grocery store where you notice a teenage cashier overwhelmed and just say, you're doing great, son. I remember when I had my first job too. That small sentence, spoken with truth and senior confidence, can echo for days in that young man's mind. The truth is, there's a crisis of wisdom in today's world. So much information, yet so little guidance. And seniors, we are the guides. We carry life lessons from the elderly that no podcast or blog can teach. A recent study from Harvard's Center for Aging found that older adults who engaged in regular intergenerational mentoring, whether formally or informally, reported a 43% higher rate of life satisfaction. Not only that, but their memory and emotional regulation improved too. Why? Because the brain, even in its later years, thrives on purpose. And purpose often comes from serving others, not out of duty, but from love. Let me tell you another story. Elena Vargas, 76, from San Diego. Widowed early, 2 kids grown, she'd spent years volunteering in her church but felt invisible outside it. Then one day she started writing letters. Yes, actual handwritten letters. She'd posted a flyer in the local college. Letters from a grandma, free advice, no judgment. Within weeks, she had over 30 students writing to her. She'd respond to each one, sometimes with scripture, sometimes with recipes, sometimes just a joke. But in every envelope, she'd tuck in a little quote, something about patience or love or forgiveness. That project lasted 3 years. Elena became Grandma Vargas to dozens of young adults who had no grandparents of their own. And when one of them got married, they flew her out to the ceremony and asked her to give the blessing. She told me, I thought my usefulness ended when I stopped being a mother. Turns out, I just needed to start being a guide. So maybe you're thinking, I don't have anything special to offer. That's not true. You have time, you have stories, you have patience, and most importantly, you've made mistakes. That's more valuable than you realize. There's a boy down your street who doesn't know how to handle disappointment. You do? There's a young woman in your neighborhood struggling with loneliness. You've lived it and survived. Those lessons, those scars, those quiet victories, you can pass them on just by showing up and listening. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you need to start a foundation or mentor full-time. No, start small. Offer a kind word to the young woman who delivers your mail. Ask your grandchild to help you with your phone, not because you need the help, but because it gives them a moment to teach, and then say thank you. Really thank them. That builds mutual respect. That's mentorship. Sometimes we think we have to shout to be heard, but seniors, real mentors, don't need to raise their voice. They speak with presence, with reflection, with the kind of elderly wisdom that only comes from living long and deeply. One of my favorite quotes comes from Carl Jung. He said, "The afternoon of life is just as full of meaning as the morning, only its meaning and purpose are different." That speaks to the heart of what we're saying here today. The second half of life is not about chasing, it's about giving, and giving from a place of calm, rooted experience. Look around you, there's someone right now, maybe even in your own family, who feels lost, overwhelmed, unsure of who they're becoming. They don't need you to solve their problems. They just need to hear, "I've been through that too." Let's not forget, in many indigenous cultures, elders are the storytellers, the teachers, the spiritual anchors of the tribe. In Western societies, sadly, we often cast elders aside. But we can change that. You don't need permission. All you need is presence, kindness, and the courage to share. Mentorship isn't a task, it's a gift. And it just might be the reason you wake up tomorrow and think, yes, my life still matters. Sometimes the most powerful change begins not with a big decision, but with a quiet shift inside. A small yes to yourself. You've heard Harold's story about building routines. You've heard Raymond and Alina stepping into mentorship without even planning to. Now let's talk about how people like them, seniors across the Western world, take these insights and turn them into something lasting. The truth is, it starts with one simple decision. To stop waiting for someone to knock on your door, waiting for an invitation to feel valuable again. Seniors who feel alive, who carry that glow of elderly motivation, don't wait, they initiate, even in little ways. Take Mrs. Carolyn Pierce from Ontario, Canada. She was 72 when she lost her husband of 50 years. She told me she wandered her home in silence for weeks, barely eating, barely moving. One day, while clearing out the guest room, she found an old knitting kit she hadn't touched in a decade. Instead of putting it in a donation box, she sat down and started stitching. A week later, she had made a soft sky blue scarf. It was nothing special, she said, but it felt like hers. She posted a picture of it online and wrote, "First thing I've made just for joy in a long while." Hundreds of people commented. Within a month, she started a Facebook. She created a small spark and then shared it. And in sharing it, others lit their candles too. There's a concept in psychology called generativity. It's the idea that in our later years, we feel happiest when we contribute to others in a meaningful way, especially when it carries part of who we are forward. That could be teaching, mentoring, storytelling, or simply modeling a peaceful, thoughtful life. And that's exactly what these seniors are doing. They're not trying to be young again, they're not competing, they're guiding. And through that, they're not just helping others, they're healing themselves. Now here's where the science backs up the spirit. A longitudinal study out of Stanford tracks seniors between the ages of 68 and 85 who regularly participated in what researchers called purpose-driven social contributions. Things like writing letters to prisoners, gardening for neighbors, or simply mentoring one younger person consistently. The study found that those seniors had lower cortisol levels, better sleep, and even reduced inflammation markers. That's not just feel-good talk. That's biology responding to meaning. And you don't have to do it alone. Some of the most powerful changes happen in pairs or small groups. In Wales, I spoke with two retired teachers, June and Eleanor, who decided to meet every Tuesday for what they called elderly wisdom tea. At first, it was just chatting. Then they began inviting younger women from the village, one at a time, for tea and life talk. They never advertised it, just quiet invitation. Within a year, there were 12 women attending, all between 20 and 40, all saying the same thing: "I feel more seen here than anywhere else." June told me, "It's like we created a little sacred circle in the middle of the week. And in giving them something, we got something back." So here's the question you might be asking now. Where do I begin? Start simple. Find a small task you can do every day that aligns with who you are. Whether it's a creative act, a caregiving gesture, or a learning habit, then find one person. And here's the secret almost no one tells seniors. You don't need to do something new to find meaning. You just need to look at what you're already doing and choose to see it with new eyes. The morning tea isn't just tea, it's a chance to pause and give thanks. Folding clothes isn't just a chore, it's a reflection of care. Talking to a stranger isn't just small talk, it's mentorship in disguise. We often think purpose must feel like fireworks, but for the elderly, especially in this chapter of life, it feels more like candlelight. Steady, gentle, quietly warming the room. One of the most touching letters I ever received came from a man named Walter, 79, in Minnesota. He wrote, "I thought meaning came from what I did in my prime. Turns out, it's what I give away in my quietest years that matters most." That's what this is all about, not reinventing yourself, but reclaiming yourself. Sharing the wisdom you've carried, living each day with a small courage to say, "I still have something to offer." And you do. You absolutely do. So maybe today you needed this reminder, that even if life feels quieter now, less full of applause and motion, it is not empty. You are not done. Meaning isn't something we find in others' approval, or in the past we used to live. It's something we choose, moment by moment, in the way we show up today. Whether through your steady routines, your gentle guidance, or your quiet strength, your presence shapes the world around you. That is the gift of senior living, of elderly wisdom passed not just through words, but through being. If anything in today's reflection spoke to your heart, I invite you to stay with us here at Elderly Reflections. This is where we honor the value of senior health, life after 65, and the silent power of simply living with intention. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments, especially this one. Where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to know. You are not forgotten, you are not alone, and your story is still being written.